Hey, this is Chris from Rekkid Talk. So we're going to do a contest entry. This is for TC Kirkham. His channel is TKR VideoCentral. TKR stands for the Kirkham Report. So if you haven't run across TC before, he's a guy I know him because he likes 7-inch records. He likes pop music. He likes top 40 music and top 40 charts a lot. He has a variety of shows that he does. The one that I see the most frequently that I'm going to go ahead and plug here is what he calls TC's Obscuria Vaults. So he does them Monday through Friday, posts them, I think around noon or so, depending, of course, on your time zone. And so basically, he plays a song, and it's usually either a one hit wonder or sort of a lesser hit from a well known artist. That's why it's called Obscuria. It's not going to be like a big super hit that you're going to remember. It's going to be more along the lines of this made it to number 36 on the chart in 1979 rather than something that was number one and that we all know. That wouldn't be obscure. So he wants us to show obscure records. He wants us to show 10 of them. Up to two formats, and if we do two formats, he wants them kind of split 50-50. So I'm going to show 5 12-inch records and 5 7-inch records. I'll link up where his contest is if you want to give it a try as well. So let's start with the albums. And so the first one I'm going to show is the Kentucky Vultures Hall of Fame. So this is straight out of Murray, Kentucky. So Murray, Kentucky has produced musicians like Chris Thile from Nickel Creek and the Punch Brothers, S.G. Goodman, who I've been plugging recently, who's getting some notice. But this is something that you would probably never find if you don't go to our local record store here. The leader of Kentucky Vultures is actually not one of the people pictured on the cover. He's actually not pictured anywhere on the album, but a guy named Tim Johns, who happens to be an English professor. So he's not a professional musician, but he is friendly with a lot of the people that are kind of the part of our little micro music scene, such as S.G. Goodman. He's put out a few albums. This was from, there's no year on here. I think it was from last year. And so Dead Bug on side A is my favorite song. And his voice sounds a lot like Bob Pollard from Guided by Voices. So you can think of maybe a more rootsy Guided by Voices. That's probably the easiest way I can describe the Kentucky Vultures to you. Sticking with the theme of stuff that's fairly local to me, we're going to talk about TNT, the Tennessee No Team. And so this is something that I found recently for $2 in a rather grungy little antique mall. It was in a booth that had a bunch of like your typically bad thrift store records. And then this was sitting here, and it's a 12-inch single. It's in sort of this generic red sleeve. So there's a TNT stands for Tennessee No Team. Don't Get Involved on one side, and then there's Don't Get Involved Anti-Dope Beat, Don't Get Involved Instrumental. And so I kind of blind bought it. And basically what it is it's basically a don't say no to drugs as a rap song. So this literally sounds like something that would be at like your high school assembly in the 80s or an after school special. And so I did some little research on Big Bad Wolf Records and TNT, your Tennessee No Team. So a guy named James Wolfe from Jackson, Tennessee, he actually had a song. Let me find it in my notes here. In 1980 called "Can Do It," and I'm gonna link it at the end because it's really cool. Actually, TC, I think you'll like it. Maybe you should do a Obscuria episode on it. It was on Sugar Hill Records, but it's not out of New York City. It's out of Jackson, Tennessee, and it's amazing. It's sort of proto rap because it's sort of funky, disco-y, and it's sort of hip hoppy. So it's super old school rap. This is really high school assembly. Your principal thought it would be cool to have somebody rap and tell you not to do drugs. And so he ended up being a successful businessman. He owned several radio stations geared toward sort of rural African Americans and sort of the Delta region. Became a preacher. He was married to a famous soul singer, semi-famous, I should say, named Denise LaSalle. I know she's passed on now. James Wolfe is still alive, kind of a Jackson, Tennessee legend. Let's do some Nashville, but we're not going to do country. We're going to do some Nashville indie rock. I think I made a video about this. Forget Cassettes, Instruments of Action. So this was on a little indie label called Theory 8 Records. This was originally released in 2003. This is a reissue from a few years ago on YK Records, because I don't think Theory 8 exists anymore. Leader of the group was a woman named Beth Cameron. This particular album, Instruments of Action, I would basically describe it as, if you like early Slater-Kinney, you would probably like Forget Cassettes. And of course, I should have this on cassette, but I don't. Southern Indiana isn't all that far away from me either. And so we're going to do Wes Rutenberg, his double album, We Control the Weather, but we don't control the weatherman. So this was basically a private press sort of thing that came out a couple years ago. So you can see the sticker, a big, beautiful double album of modern hits. And so if you're familiar with sort of the Southern Indiana punk and alternative scene, so like Zero Boys, Paul Mahern from Zero Boys was involved in, I think, producing this album. Lemonheads. So Wes has been in the Lemonheads. He'd played in Antenna, which was after the Blake Babies broke up. John and Frida, who were also when they moved back to Indiana. Margot and the Nuclear So-Sos, and a lot of the other people from sort of the Southern Indiana alternative scene. And then the final album, this is not local to me, but this is Kramer with music for films edited by Moss. So this is sort of weird soundtracky sort of music on Joyful Noise. Joyful Noise does an artist in residence thing. They had Thor Harris do it one year, Kramer do it one year. They put out a box set. I've gotten a couple of these over the time. So this is obviously some pretty obscure stuff. I don't remember ever hearing anybody talk about this in any of the videos that I've seen. So let's hit some 7-inch singles now, 5 of them. Spurge. So when I was working in Yellowstone Park and briefly living near Bozeman, Montana, in the sort of early to mid 90s, basically Spurge was sort of Billings, Montana's sort of alt rock group for that. They were sort of a funk rock grunge sort of band. And so this has Questions and Greed. I also have their self-released cassette that they put out, but I'm not going to show it here. So basically, if a sort of national act, somebody like a Love Battery or Gas Huffer or Janitor Joe, that level of people, when they were kind of going back and forth between Minneapolis and Seattle, some of the towns in Montana like Billings or Bozeman or Missoula they would stop at, and Spurge would be like the local opener. And if it was a night with all local bands, then Spurge would be the headliners. I actually thought they were pretty good. I always thought they had a chance of making it, but they never did. Slough-Water Records. So the Kentucky Vultures that I showed earlier is on Slough-Water Records. And so this is a split, Volume 2. There's also a Volume 1, which I don't have. Volume 1 has something by the Savage Radley, which was a group that S.G. Goodman was in before she went solo. So this has Fake McAfee and Leonard the Band. I think Fates from Murray, and I think Leonard the band, if I remember, are from Metropolis, Illinois, just across the river from Paducah, Kentucky. The next one I'm going to show is probably the one that I'm going to show that has the most chance of somebody actually owning it, but it's Dinosaur. Dinosaur's first single from 1985 on Homestead Records called Repulsion. And so you can see it was written by Jay Mascis. So, of course, this is the first single by the band that we now know as Dinosaur Jr. They were originally just called Dinosaur, but it turned out there was another band with that name who said you can't be named that. So they tacked on the Junior to get around that. Again, this is probably something that somebody else could have. But this is an OG, so it was before they had to put Junior on. How about some Romanian folk music? I bet you don't have any Romanian 7 inches in your collection. So when I was at the Crazy Chaotic Good antique store, when I was getting records 5 for $1, I got 5 foreign records. Most of them were Romanian. This is one of them. Tocurli Popular Romanesti. So it's like Romanian folk music. Electra record was sort of like during the communist era, because this is from sometime in the 60s. And you can see it is a 33 RPM, even though it's a 7-inch. This was music from the Bihor region of northwest Romania, which borders with Hungary. And I think they had different ones for different regions of the country. And then finally, I've shown this in a couple other videos and put this on Instagram, but I just love the picture sleeve for this. I Can Make It Good For You by CC Weather. And so there's very little information about CC Weather online. But again, I speculated. The writers and the producer of this record were well-known country music songwriters. This was from 1975. It sort of sounds like a countrified disco record. And my theory is that they were trying to do some sort of countrified disco. I don't know if CC Weather is the singer, and I don't know if the singer is the model on the sleeve or not, or if CC Weather was just the name of the band. I'm assuming it was just studio musicians. They cut this track, they put it out as a promo. Never went anywhere bigger than that. It's the same song on both sides. That's pretty obscure. So maybe TT's Obscuria. I don't even know if there's a YouTube of this song or not. So there's 10 records that you guys probably don't own, except maybe somebody has that OG Dinosaur single. But most of the other ones, I'd be very surprised. But if you do, let me know. Hope you like this, Mr. Kirkham.